As we get into all things new here in Washington, and that is, of course, the new Congress, which is already underway. We are going to have new members of the Trump cabinet have their confirmation hearings this week, and of course, Donald Trump himself will take his oath a week from today. What swept them into office, Republicans in charge, is frustration, anger, just a feeling of not feeling good about this country. This is something that officials cannot control, and yet it is no question going to add to that feeling and continue to make people in this country, particularly in California, feel incredibly unsettled.
Yeah, and look, it's a crisis he's going to have to confront immediately. Even if this fire is contained, hopefully it is contained over the next couple of days. The rebuilding is going to take years. It's going to cost tens of billions of dollars to rebuild. It's going to require a significant federal partner. You've heard local officials over the last couple of days saying they need Donald Trump and his administration to be fully supportive of the federal rebuilding effort, and they're pushing him to actually come and visit as well. They believe that maybe they're making some progress in getting him there, but that will be the big question. They're going to have to figure out how much money that will be needed for California, what conditions, if any, to place on that money. There's some suggestions from Republicans that there would be conditions, and whether Democrats would agree to that. And typically these things are done, there's bipartisan support, and there's lots of money that goes into places that are hit by natural disasters. Will that happen this time? That's going to be a big question for the new administration. Will they put past grievances aside and come together? It's uncertain.
Yeah, and before we even get there, what's going on inside California state and more local politics is, unsurprisingly, a lot of, again, anger among the residents of Los Angeles County, frustration, and it's being aimed at everybody from the Democratic governor to the Democratic mayor to other officials. Let's listen to what Gavin Newsom said over the weekend about that.
We just want the adjudication of the facts. As I say, it's not about finger pointing. It's about answering the questions you and everybody wants answered. We're all better off when we're working together to take care of people and to make sure people are supported.
Look, I mean, this is going to be a test of his leadership. I mean, there's no surprise or mystery, the fact that he has national ambitions. All of that is put on hold right now, and I think he would agree with it. I mean, being on top of the catastrophe and the crisis, which is very much in its very beginning stages, is going to determine his political future, if there is one. But politics aside, what I think is different about sort of this crisis or tragedy from Katrina, and obviously it's different in its entirety, like who is in charge? Mm-hmm. And I think that obviously he's the governor, but the mayor obviously started this crisis. She was absent. She was on a trip outside of Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Times has been doing incredible reporting on this. They had a story, as did the New York Times, as saying she was on her 5th trip internationally and said that she would stop traveling internationally. All those questions will be resolved later. But it does seem to me, as we approach a new moment here in Washington with the president-elect, we have heard what he has said before about California. He has specifically said back in 2017 and 2018, I believe it was, he was wondering how many people voted for him, and that was even last year, how many voted for him in California before he gives a disaster aid. So my guess is that he also assumes this leadership role, but it is probably not the best time for there to be a change of hands here when there's a deep political crisis in California.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see about the leadership role. He is, by definition, going to be in that role starting,
regardless of how he plays it,
starting next week. And how he's playing it now is not that. Just continuing what he did last week. For example, on Saturday, he put on his social media platform, "The fires are still raging in LA. The incompetent Pauls have no idea how to put them out. Thousands of magnificent houses are gone. Many of them more soon will be lost. There is death all over the place. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the history of our country. They just can't put out the fires. What's wrong with them?" You kind of alluded to this, but I want to play what Gavin Newsom told our colleague Kyung Law. He was specifically responding to something that J.D. Vance, the soon-to-be vice president, said on Sunday, but he incorporated a renewed invitation to both of them.
I would invite him, as I did Donald Trump, to visit with the community, express empathy of the scale of this tragedy, and be here for the American people that happen to reside here in Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump have clashed in the past. They've clashed over how to handle disasters in the past. So this isn't a new fight, but clearly the governor is trying to take the temperature down here. He knows, as Manu said, this is going to be a massive rebuilding effort. The amount of federal money that's going to be needed is going to be huge. And if Trump makes it harder for that money to get out the door, does he start putting conditions on it? Does he politicize it? Those are real worries.
Well, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the, I've talked to some House members, in LA last week who are really worried about this and how this is going to unfold and what he might do.
And you were talking about the funding, of course. That's what you're following on a minute-by-minute basis. Listen to what John Barrasso, who of course is a member of the Senate Republican leadership, said about federal funding to go to help rebuild.
People want to make sure that as rebuilding occurs, as things go on in California, they have to be resilient so that these sorts of things can't happen again. And the policies of the liberal administration out there, I believe, have made these fires worse. I expect that there will be strings attached to money that is ultimately approved.
Now, I just want to throw in here, and you can certainly add to this because you know the nitty-gritty, there were not significant strings attached when the Congress gave money to states that were affected by Hurricane Helene and Milton, states that are run largely by Republicans. These are red states.
Yeah, there was roughly $100 billion in that aid that was rolled into a larger bill to keep the government open. You've heard some conservatives in the past say that they need to cut spending to offset the amount of money that goes to federal aid efforts, but usually that's a small portion of the House Republican Conference or Senate Republican Conference. This is a Republican leader, the number 2 Republican, John Barrasso, saying there will be some strings attached. It's unclear exactly what that means, but the process will work like this. The White House Budget Office, which would be run by Russ Vought, who's a conservative nominee to run that office, assuming that he is confirmed, they'll put out a request for how much money they want. Then it'll go through the Senate and the House to figure out what they want. Now, if Vought and Trump are demanding certain conditions, then that's where the Republican leadership ultimately is going to be, and that would be a shift, considerable shift than what we've seen in the past, which is bipartisan support behind a lot of money that's needed for places that desperately are hit hard.
Particularly red states.
Yeah.
No strings attached, that we certainly in recent history, and now that it's a very Democratic state, they're singing a different tune.